Okay, look, I just got a message that we are live.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of Searching for a Job in Tech. Today we are going to be discussing how to set yourself apart as a junior developer. We hold these different sessions on the fourth Thursday of every month. So if you want to learn more about looking for a job, be sure to check us out each month. And then we also have previous episodes up on YouTube. Ashley, so go ahead and next slide. So Techlahoma's mission is to advance Oklahoma's grassroots technology community. We are made up of many different professions, organizations, companies, all kinds of stuff. We try to be as diverse as we possibly can and try to help expand and build up the tech community within Oklahoma. And by the way, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Diana Barnes. I am Vice President of Techlahoma and also the Intent Programs Lead at the OU Innovation Hub. And then today we've got Ashley Farram, Dustin Winters, and Zane Schwab. If you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ashley Farram with Hartwig Staffing. I've been in recruiting and some form of business development for the last 7+ years, and I'll celebrate 2 years with Hartwig Staffing next year. So I'll let Zane introduce himself.
My name is Zane Schwab. I've been working in tech for the past 10 years or so. About 6 months ago, the great team at Hartwig recruited me to be a recruiter, and I've been loving it ever since and having a great time.
Is DJ on? DJ's having some connectivity issues, but if he pops back up, just so you know a little bit about him, he's I think he's got a good 13, 14 years of experience in recruiting, and he and Rebecca Hartwig have worked together for several years, but he just joined our team probably about a year ago or so. So a little bit about him.
Yep.
All right, and let's do next slide. So our code of conduct, all events are governed by the Techlahoma Code of Conduct. You can find out more about that at conduct.techlahoma.org. But it pretty much boils down to be awesome to each other, don't be rude, don't be mean, don't be a jerk, and we'll all get along just great. Next slide. So the Techlahoma community is made up of entry-level individuals, expert, and everything in between. We have people who are learning how to code with free code camp, different colleges and universities around the state, Holberton School, online boot camps, you name it. We've probably got somebody who covers it. We also have experts. We've got project managers. We've got recruiters. We've got junior and senior devs. We've got everything. Sales. We do a lot of local business outreach, especially with trying to connect people with jobs throughout the state and growing the tech job field in Oklahoma and trying to help skill up people to be able to get those jobs and get some better jobs. We also have targeted user group support, and there are user groups all throughout the state that cover almost any topic you can imagine. I believe we've got approximately 30 user groups at the moment. So be sure to check Techlahoma Slack and meet up to find out more about those user groups. Next slide.
You ready for the next?
Yes, please. There are multiple ways to get involved with Techlahoma. You can attend any of our meetup user groups. You can join us at Slack, and you don't need an invitation. Just go to slack.techlahoma.org, and it will automatically add you to the Slack. We have 3 conferences every year. We've got the UI UX conference that's usually in early spring. Or late winter, early spring. We've got Tulsa Web Devs. 200 OK, which is the Tulsa web development conference. And then we also have Thunder Plains, which is in November. 200 OKs usually in May. This year for Thunder Plains, given the state of the world, we're going to do a special throwback conference where we're going to be doing highlights of our favorite talks in the past. And that is going to be sponsored by Heartland. And then we're planning some big, amazing conferences for next year to make up for the past 2 years. We have workshops that we put on. We have networking events because networking is one of the most important things you can do to advance your career and more. Next slide, please. All right, so how to set yourself apart as a junior developer. And Ashley, if you want to go ahead and get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've already introduced ourselves, so we'll just jump right into the talk. And so before I dig into everything, I wanted to explain the flow of this talk. And we'll start with how to stand out from the perspective of breaking into the industry. And then we'll talk about how to build upon your skill set and how to build a resume and stand out that way. And then how to stand out in an interview and the workplace. So we'll try to go through different pathways. That way we can hopefully relate to different people watching that might be in different stages of junior development. Because a junior developer, that could be someone with 1 year of experience, maybe 2 years of experience. It could be someone, you know, with a boot camp. So we tried to speak to as many people as we can, obviously, throughout this. But so to start, we'll talk about education. And I think boot camps are a great way to gain initial experience. It's a good way to get an initial foundation of knowledge in a specific language or stack. And you're able to get some pretty interactive experience with instructors and classmates a lot of times in boot camps. I've even heard of paid boot camps. I don't know a lot about it. Most of them are not going to be paid, but something to potentially look into. I would say boot camps can sometimes be, I guess, less in depth per se than a computer science degree in some ways. But then again, you know, it can offer really good hands-on experience that maybe a computer science degree doesn't always offer. But I would say with a boot camp, I definitely suggest continuing to work on projects outside of just the boot camp or do multiple boot camps. It's just one way to really add to your resume and stand out. But maybe there are people who will hire someone just straight out of a boot camp, but you definitely want to supplement that experience as much as possible. The next one is joining Techlahoma or being a part of Techlahoma in some capacity. And Diana has already touched on a lot of the things that Techlahoma offers. They have so many resources. It's unbelievable. And I would say, you know, so they have tons of video content. They do these streams regularly, and all of the streams that have been done previously are on their website. So even if you've missed something, you can go back, and there are talks on, you know, how to break into development, talks on introductions into different technologies or languages and things of that nature. You know, as she mentioned, you can join different user groups. Free Code Camp is a great option or something for people to look into from an education standpoint. And you gain access that way to experienced mentors. And, you know, there are a lot of senior tech people involved in Techlahoma, and you have direct access to those people. Their Slack channel, you can get on Slack and ask different questions. There are tons of different ways to connect with people. And like Diana said, networking and how important that is to your career. You can find jobs through their Slack channel, all sorts of things. So to plug Techlahoma, it truly is an invaluable asset to our local tech community, and it should definitely be utilized.
Yes, and also we are in the process of launching a actual jobs board. So keep an eye out for that here coming very, very soon.
Yeah. And then, so also just traditional education, obviously college experience is a fantastic direction to go, pursuing like a computer science degree or something similar. Internships obviously are a great way to gain experience and within the workplace. And so with internships, a lot of times those are primarily available to people going that more traditional route like college. And I know not everybody goes that direction, breaking into development. And so that's okay. We're just trying to speak to just different options or different pathways to go about this. And then, like I mentioned, mentors, obviously leaning on experienced people and learning from them. And I've even seen some LinkedIn courses. Now, with LinkedIn courses, I wouldn't rely solely on those to become a developer by any means, but definitely a good way, again, to just get a good foundation of knowledge and build upon your skill set. So
yeah, I wanted to add.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you all had
sorry. Yeah, I had a couple things to add really quick. So on the LinkedIn courses, I did teach myself WordPress and PHP through LinkedIn Learning, and was able to get paid jobs after doing that. And then for those of you who don't know, OU has launched an online computer science program through OU Tulsa that's available to everybody in the state. So if 4-year degree is what you're wanting to go for and you need flexibility, look into that.
That's great to hear about. I know the LinkedIn courses are out there as a resource, but that is fantastic to hear of somebody who's actually utilized those and gained experience, and able to break into the industry that way. That's awesome. Zane or DJ, did you have any input?
Yeah, there's just lots of great resources like everybody's mentioned. Pluralsight's a great one I've used before, not only for development, but anything tech related. I mean, it's very thorough and comprehensive. And then don't forget about YouTube and, other resources like that. So there's plenty out there to help you get to where you want to be.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll move on and just kind of talk about projects or just any kind of additional experience that you could do to kind of break into the industry and stand out that way. Now, when deciding what type of project you want to take on, one interesting thing that you can ask yourself is, what is a problem? What is something I'm experiencing in my life that I could solve? And designing a project around that is a really interesting way to come up with a project that, is interest to you and something that you might start and finish, which I think is important. And then obviously keeping your project simple to start. You can progress into more advanced stuff as time goes on, but starting out, just working on simple projects and just getting some exposure. Now, just some different examples of projects that I've heard of people doing. So designing a portfolio website or a multi-page responsive website. I've seen people do like a mock restaurant where you go on to the restaurant, you can view different menus and, just different landing pages like that. And then I've seen someone create simple games, web scraping tools, simple applications. So a developer I know starting out was helping with a fundraiser for a car show, and it involved voting. And they did all of the voting manually, but it was so much work. And she decided, you know what, this is kind of a pain. So she decided, I'm just going to build an application that will record these votes and auto tally them based on the categories. And it sped up the process. It saved headaches. It was just a neat project for her to take on, and it just solved a problem that she was experiencing. So I just thought that was an interesting example. And then start being a contributor on Stack Overflow. So people ask a lot of questions on Stack Overflow, and even junior developers can help provide a lot of value, I would say. And then it allows them to start working on providing feedback and giving back to the community, because a lot of development roles rely heavily on feedback and being collaborative. So just something neat that you could add to your experience. And then GitHub. I think a lot of people know what GitHub is, but you can go on there and discover code written by other people. You can learn from their code, use it on your own projects and things like that. But the biggest thing for projects, I would just say, is I've had hiring managers tell me that they just want to see effort. So they want to see passion and interest in the field, especially, you know, from a junior developer perspective. You know, how can you show that it's something that you're interested in and engaged in, and projects, and, you know, building upon your resume that way, show your interest in development. And hiring managers like to see that. Anything to add for that, you all? Okay.
Projects
Oh.
will help too, just to show to potential hiring managers and companies as well, and like what you enjoy doing the most. It paints the picture of what it could almost serve as, think of it kind of like a cover letter.
Okay, so on this one, I'm just kind of curious, and even if people are watching and they want to give their perspective, I was curious on, I saw this quote on LinkedIn yesterday, and it's, don't worry about how experienced people would build an application, focus on how you would build it, and then get feedback. So consume less and produce more. And so I thought it was interesting because I like the idea of getting your hands dirty, and producing, and not being afraid to make mistakes. But the important thing in the quote for me is get feedback. So rather than kind of being afraid, like jump in, get your hands dirty, but utilize that feedback that you get and learn from your mistakes. But what better way to learn sometimes? But I am curious, like Zane or Diana, to get your take on that.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, a lot of times the hardest thing is just to get started. So, you know, don't get too much in your head about, you know, your current skill level, or, you know, looking at more experienced developers and thinking that you need to be there already. Just get started, you know, get something going, and then, you know, use those resources in those communities like we've talked about to get that feedback, and just continue to improve and build it out. So just get started and work from there.
Absolutely. And in Tulsa, we have Hack Night, which is the first Tuesday of every month. So if you ever wanted to build stuff and get feedback on it, the Techlahoma community is here to help you with that. So you're welcome to come to one of our Hack Nights, show off what you've been working on, get feedback and things like that. It's definitely, I would second the consume less, produce more, because you can have all the knowledge of the world in the world, but if you don't show that you know it and you don't try actually doing anything, you're not going to be able to get a job. And you're going to learn from all the mistakes that you make, and you'll probably learn more from making those mistakes than you would just from consuming content.
Okay. And on this one, DJ, I can't see DJ. Is he with us?
I'm here. I have my
Okay.
video feed off just because I'm worried about the connection. So yeah,
Much better.
if everyone's aware or not aware, I'm having some connectivity issues. So if I drop, they might have to kick in for me. But so as far as like how the resume should look, feel, and appear, content in there, formatting, I mean, most of us know simple, clean format, right? And a lot of us have been taught, you know, just one page at most. I would say that's not exactly, you know,
DJ, sadly, you're back to cutting out.
I'll jump in. So on the, like DJ said, so yes, simple, clean format. I think he was starting to talk on the 1-page rule, which is not necessarily a thing anymore. Certainly don't send in a 10-page resume by any means, but 2 pages I would say is ideal, maximum. But even if you had to do 3, if it's really relevant experience, and you feel like you really need it on there to highlight your experience to a particular role, then go for it. And then as far as outcomes, impact of work and projects, I think, you know, what he wanted to touch on there is if you have experience within the workplace as a developer, talk about how your what you've worked on has impacted the business side of the business or the company. And then listing the technologies that you have experience with on your resume is really, really important. So I say, make sure you list all the technologies that you have experience with and can speak to that experience. One piece of advice I have is do not list technologies on your resume that you cannot speak to having some kind of experience with. You don't just need to list, the technologies that you have the most experience with, but more so, just anything that you can speak to in some capacity. And then something pointing out is whenever you're posting your resume online and you're looking for a role and you're posting in an applicant tracking system or a resume search engine or something like that, there are algorithms that they use, or people use buzzwords, and so the more technologies you have listed and the more verbiage you have on your resume, the more likely you'll get through those algorithms or pop up in those searches. Listing any projects that you have experience with. So just a kind of a formula you can do is put the title of your project, again, technologies that you used on that project, and then if there's a link to it, that would be ideal. Listing links to the website or the portfolio that you've created, anything where someone can see your work is always going to make you stand out versus someone where they're just reading words on a page. And then I put references on here, and I specify not on resumes. So with references, I don't necessarily suggest putting them on your resume, but it's great to have great to have references just ready to go. Have your references. Have your references contacted and let them know, hey, I'm applying to positions, I'm actively interviewing, and so people may be reaching out to you, so that they're aware and they know to call these people back. And then LinkedIn profile. You can put your LinkedIn profile on your resume. That's great. But I put this on here specifically to suggest, it's almost another form of a resume. So have a LinkedIn profile. It's a great way to highlight your experience. It's a great way to network. It's a great way to find open positions. And I actually put a specific example of someone whose content you could really learn a lot from. I follow him. His name's Jason Humphrey, and he's and he's a software development career coach. And I'm not saying that you need to use him for a career coach or anything like that per se, but he posts tons of content on LinkedIn. And the interesting thing that I really learned from is I see a lot of senior developers or just people with a lot of tech experience comment on his posts and give their input on things. And so I'm constantly learning from people, just kind of talking back and forth on a lot of his posts. So if you can find people like that to follow, LinkedIn, again, is just kind of a good resource. So if you want to check out Jason, then go for it. Zane or Diana, did you have anything to add on that one?
I'll just reiterate the importance of having that LinkedIn profile. I know a lot of the hiring managers that Ashley, DJ, and I work with, they really like to see that. And so, not only have it, but put your picture on there, be active within the community. Like Ashley said, use it kind of as another form of your resume. List your skill sets on there, the tools that you're comfortable with, the stuff that you're working on, any certifications that you have or that you're working on. It's just a really good kind of profile piece for the community to kind of see who you are, what you're about, the types of things that you're working on.
Agreed.
And when I was interviewing back in the day, a lot of the places that I interviewed at wanted to see all the projects I had out on GitHub. So make sure that you're contributing to GitHub often.
Okay. And then Zane's going to take over. Yes. Okay. Zane's going to take over and talk about interviews.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Ashley. So interviews are obviously a very important part of the job search. And, we talk to a lot of our candidates about, how to be best prepared for an interview. Obviously, it's a time that can be kind of nerve-wracking and stressful. So as prepared as you can be going into it, you're going to be more comfortable, more confident, and be able to speak to those hiring managers and the teams that you're talking with in a competent way. So the main things that we recommend are doing your research on the company and the role. It's really great to go in and to an interview knowing what that company has been up to recently. Do some research, see if they've been in headlines recently. What are their newest products that they've released, or be able to speak to the progress and the work that they've been doing. And I think most interviewers it's a two-way conversation, right? So they want to see that you're engaged. They want to see that you're also excited to be there, and that you have questions and things to talk about, as opposed to just answering questions from them. So if you can find out, what stack they're using, who you're going to be speaking with, it definitely doesn't hurt to help. Definitely doesn't hurt to ask, prior to an interview, what stack are you guys using? What types of technologies are you guys using? Do you know who I'm going to be speaking with? Some employers may not give you that information, but being proactive in that way is going to really set you up to be able to really speak to the details that may come up in that interview. And then finally, be ready to sell yourself. If you're anything like me, it's kind of hard. You're maybe not be comfortable bragging about yourself, but an interview is the time to do it. So tell them why you're going to be great for this position. Be confident. Just be ready to speak to your experience in that way. So, and then if you are a true junior dev, or junior in any industry or role really, and you don't have that working experience, talk about some other things that are valuable. So what classes have you taken, whether it's from boot camp or from university or those online resources that we've talked about? What do those projects look like? What was your role in those projects? What boot camps have you been working on? Tutorials that you're taking on a regular basis. And then I feel like personally certifications are a big deal. Certifications can take a lot of time. And if you're working on them or have completed them, that really shows that potential employer, how committed you are to the process to get where you want to be, as a junior developer. So, actually, Diana, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate too. One, definitely don't be afraid to ask a few questions, once that initial interview is set up, just so that you can go in as prepared as possible. And I did want to speak to also like trying to figure out their stack. If it's not in the job description already, another resource you could use is to go see if they have a senior developer posting. Typically those will be, they'll list more in depth technologies that they're working with and things along those lines and those types of job descriptions. So you might try that resource before asking the question. But again, don't be afraid to send a few questions over, once you get that initial interview scheduled, if they haven't provided a lot of info. And then the only other thing I was going to touch on as well was on the, talking about your experience is just make sure that you're detailed. Again, I will say this 20 times today, but really list out the technologies that you're working with, speak to those. How did you use them? You can even do kind of a like ranking yourself, I consider myself to be intermediate with JavaScript right now. I'd probably be more of a beginner with C#.net, but maybe somewhere in between beginner and intermediate, or I would probably say a 5 out of 10, 10 being expert. So like painting the picture for them of what extent of experience you have, with these things.
Awesome.
Something I want to throw out really quick. If anybody has any questions, I know that the Twitch chat is locked. So if you want to join us at slack.techlahoma.org, hashtag, what was it? Jobs-webinar. You can ask questions there. you've got the rare opportunity to pick the brains of professionals here, so take advantage of that while you can.
Do we have any questions so far?
Not at all. So that's why I'm wondering if I forgot to throw it out there.
Yeah.
No worries. All right. So continuing on with interviews, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but talking about the projects that you've worked on during your educational time, whether it's boot camps or traditional university. Another great community to be a part of is GitHub. Constantly posting on there, putting your projects on there, asking for feedback, being a participant, giving feedback and ideas as well. Make sure it's going both ways, and keeping them updated as you learn, as you continue to grow. Go back in there and update your projects, and show kind of that progression that you've been working on. Do you have a portfolio you could share? That's a great live way, especially in the time of video interviews over Zoom or what have you. Being able to show that kind of stuff live can really make you stand out for sure. And I think one of the biggest pieces of anxiety that can be caused in interviews is like, what if they ask me something I don't know about, right? It's probably going to happen, and that's okay. How more often than not, employers are going to intentionally ask tricky or difficult questions, really just to see how you handle that situation. So if they ask you something that you don't know about, don't freak out, take a breath, think about it, and speak to how you would find the answer, and be honest with them. Employers will be able to tell if you're making something up as you go. So just be honest with them. Tell them, well, this is how I would find the answer. This is the resources I would use. If you have any relevant experience of a time where you had a project or an assignment, or you were asked something you didn't know, how did you handle that previously, right? So just this week, I had a candidate of mine in an interview, got asked a question. He just told the interviewer, like, I don't know, but I have some similar experience in doing X, Y, and Z. Well, the more that they talked about it, they found out that they were in fact talking about the same thing. They were just using different terminology and verbiage. So had he just clammed up and said, I don't know, he would have lost that opportunity to have that two-way conversation, and they were able to determine that he does in fact know the technology he's talking about. It was just in a different capacity, in a different context. So I was really proud of him for sticking with it and just talking that out. So definitely kind of leverage those experiences.
Yeah, that's a great example.
To just keep the conversation going, and that shows confidence as well, right? So I don't know, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I have a question actually for Diana. Just as a hiring manager, I actually have a couple of questions. So one, I hear varying opinions on GitHub. I most of the time very positive, but I'm curious, what's your take on GitHub? I know you kind of touched on it earlier of like keeping your repos updated and such.
That's a good question.
Do you think it's valuable?
I like to be able. I do. I like to be able to go in, because then I can actually go in and see what they've built. I can read the code. I can get an idea of if they've written it themselves, if it looks, and as you get better with code, you can tell when somebody has copy and pasted, and not that that's wrong, but you can get an idea of how well they figured something out by reading that code.
Yeah.
Also, clean code is something that's important to me, so I can go in and see how well have they documented, how clean is that code. I was actually just interviewing somebody Tuesday morning to do some dev work for me for the iHub, and this was all stuff that I was wanting to see. So to me, that is very important. I also want to see actual work that they've done, but to me, I do put a lot of value on the GitHub repositories.
Yeah, and I've heard that before from hiring managers. I actually have one hiring manager who, for a junior developer, he requires them to have some kind of contribution or projects or something on there. And then I'm also curious, so from a portfolio perspective, right now it's fantastic because we have, so many people are doing virtual interviews. You just screen share and click the link or send them a link. What do you think about someone like how would it best be to present a portfolio if you're at an in-person interview, or should they just send it ahead of time?
Oh, that's a good question. I've been lucky, and they have usually sent links to their portfolios in their resume.
Yeah.
So I've never had to ask for anything during the interview. I would say either way is probably okay, although I would probably lean towards going ahead and doing like the people that I've interviewed have done, and have the links to your portfolios in your resume so they can look over it ahead of time and prepare questions and things like that. That'd make it easier on the interviewer.
Okay. And then just be prepared to answer questions and speak to your portfolio at that point.
Exactly.
Okay. Anything else on this one, Zane or Diana? So finally, we'll talk about how to stand out in the workplace. So not all junior developers, like I mentioned, are people who don't have experience or are going through the interview process. They may be right in the middle of the workplace. So just touching on that, I would say it's important to be collaborative. Communication is really important. When you're getting into development and you're joining new teams and things like that, communication is so important. Talk to the people around you, learn from the people around you. Oftentimes 9 times out of 10 as a junior developer, you're likely working with at least one senior person, if not, multiple. Make sure you're learning from those people and you're talking with them and collaborating with them and just taking in knowledge. And then I always say, be open to feedback. We kind of talked about it in that quote, but being open to feedback, but also providing feedback yourself. And I think there's a line as a junior developer, or just in general, make sure that you have couth about the feedback that you're providing, and you do it in the right way. But I think everyone should have a voice, and speaking up and providing feedback and really being a part of that team is fantastic. And then I put use all your resources before asking for help. And what I mean by that, I don't mean don't ask for help. And I don't mean spend half your day, trying to find the answer to a question because you're afraid to ask for help. But I do mean use your resources first. So is it something that you could Google and figure out? Is it something in your training manual? Is there somewhere that you might be able to find the answer? Spend a few minutes trying to solve problems on your own before your first reaction is to go and ask a question. I think learning things on your own is the best way to retain information and gain experience that way. And I think hiring managers, you'll stand out in that regard just by not being the person who's asking a question every 5 seconds. But again, if you have questions, also ask them. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I do think that they are important. So again, fine lines.
Yeah, on that, and not just in development, but technology in general. Like a good team, if you go to somebody for help, a senior individual, a good team is going to ask you first, like, well, what have you already tried, right? And so if you come to them and say, well, I've done X, Y, and Z, I'm still having issues, that's going to give you some credibility that, you're making this effort and that you genuinely want to know. And so, if they see that you are truly making an effort and then coming to them for assistance, I think they're going to be a lot more likely to take the time to give you that feedback and that guidance.
Yeah. And then trying to gain an understanding of the business side of what you're working on. I added that because I think it's really important to understand what problem you're solving. Most times when you're developing software, you're developing an application, you're solving a business problem, or you're doing something to contribute to the business. And so I think it's very advanced thinking for a junior developer to really try and understand that side of it. And Zane actually had an interesting take on, I'll let you kind of talk about, like, maybe even asking to shadow.
Yeah, if you have the opportunity, ask your leadership to shadow individuals in other departments who are using the tools that you're building. So you can sit with them for 30 minutes to an hour or whatever time allows, and see how they're using what you're working on. You can get an idea of their pain points what they love about it, what they would like to see improved. So having that context with what you're working on can really help you have a better understanding of, you know, what that end result could and should be.
Yeah. And then always be improving, working on your skills, you know, doing ongoing education. I think that's pretty straightforward. You know, taking on projects outside of work, don't burn yourself out. I am not saying that you need to be like doing development all night long every night. I think it's healthy to step away from work. But I also think if you learn something really neat or you start feeling good about a particular technology, or I don't know, you're working on something interesting, you want to go try it outside of work and create a little project or a side project, do that. Like any hands-on experience that you can get is just, it's invaluable, and you'll just become really well-rounded, you know, especially, you know, learning the business side of things, working on these extra little projects. Not everyone will be doing that. So again, this is how to set yourself apart. And then very important is being adaptable. You know, the tech world is, it's ever changing and things do not always go as planned. I think anyone who's ever worked on a development project probably knows that things don't go as planned. I don't know if I've ever heard of a project just going 100% smoothly, no bumps in the roads. You know, it's just a part of it. And the earlier on that you can realize and understand the importance of adaptability, I think the better. Having a good attitude. And again, Zane had an awesome take on how to look at this when things go wrong, when you hit a bump in the road, or say you have a client, you're working on you work for a company that's more client facing, and they decide, hey, we're scrapping this, we're going a different direction. Or your company could do the same thing and say, yeah, we're not doing this, we're going to do something different. Zane has a good take on how to look at that.
Yeah, I mean, it can be really frustrating when you've invested a lot of time, you know, in a particular project, and then to only find out that, you know, you're changing directions or it's getting scrapped. And I think, you know, initially it's really easy to say, well, that was a complete waste of time. Why did I, you know, invest all that effort into it? But really just try to think of it as like, what have I learned from that? You know, I truly believe that there's no such thing as wasting your time, you know, on a project or, you know, when working on things. So just really try to think about the time you spend on that. What did you learn from it? What can be applicable to the next project or future projects? And just try to keep those positive takeaways from your times.
Yeah. Diana, do you have anything to add?
Not on this. Zane has been taking all the words right out of my mouth.
He's a wise one.
But back on the interviews, we did have some comments by Ryan Bupp.
Okay.
He had said, great comment by Ashley, that hiring managers want to see something much better than words on paper. If you do have code on GitHub, it should be deployed somewhere in addition to reading the code. So yes, I usually do see that, and sometimes I think there's usually a link in GitHub where you can go and click, and it'll take you to where you can see what it's going to look like. He also said that the reason he likes to see work is because someone starting as a junior dev isn't done. They're just beginning. Showing that they are working and hustling tells me they're likely to hustle at the job.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ryan is one of those. Also, he's just a wise one, and a big part of Techlahoma. And so his advice and input is very valuable as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, honestly, beyond that, here's our contact information. If anybody would like to ask questions, it sounds like maybe there might have been some confusion. I think there were a lot of questions, surely. So if you all have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to one of us, and we can talk more in depth on a particular topic or answer a question for you. But I think that's all we have, unless you all have something.
Zane, you've got anything?
No.
No. I was going to say, for those of you who want to get involved with Techlahoma, feel free to reach out to myself or to Emily Harden, who is the Techlahoma community manager. We're happy to answer questions and get you connected to whatever it is that you're looking to get involved in. And thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it, and have a great week.